Greetings and welcome to Mount Vernon Unitarian Church on this Palm Sunday morning. My name is Alan Bunner. I'm a member of this church. Whether this is your first time or your umpteenth time, know that you are welcome here and that we are glad to have you. We are continuing to navigate how to best offer services in this time of COVID, and we are glad we can provide this forum, both in person and virtual, to find comfort and to recommit ourselves to the mission of supporting one another in our spiritual journeys, working for justice, caring for the earth, and building the common good. It's good to be together. Today is our Workin' Any Day, and we are looking forward to seeing you here as we work together to make our Holy Hill more attractive. We'll be working from 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. Light snacks can be eaten outside. If you come after the service is over, then please wear work clothes if you can, and bring gardening gloves if you can. Pruners and hand shovels are also helpful. Anybody that has paperwork for community service, please see Leah Chowdhury and she will sign it. No experience necessary. Masks are optional as long as you are working outside. Next, hymn books. If you've taken hymn books home during this COVID period and no longer need them there, I'd like to remind you to bring them back, please. But of course, if you're still watching from home and using them there, please, of course, feel free to keep them there for your use. And lastly, please look to your emails, phones, and website for continued updates about worship and other church happenings. And know that if you are ever in need, your church staff is only an email or a phone call away. So I'd like to invite you now to take a deep breath with me as we enter into this time of worship. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share. As we gather here, may we have joy in learning, joy in listening, joy in singing, joy in being together. Please rise in body and spirit and join us in singing number 1000 in the Teal book, Morning Has Come. I invite you now, as we unite our voices, to speak aloud the covenant of our community, these words both known within our hearts and in our order of service. Love is the teaching of this church. The quest of truth is its daily task, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve life in community, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. This is our covenant with each and with all.
Are you talking?
No, I'm singing.
Oh, thank you. Good morning. Oh, that was not, you didn't convince me. It's a good morning. Good morning. And it is, and thank you, Mr. Mark, for coming up here with me. My name is Miss Ann. I'm Director of Lifespan Spiritual Growth here at Mount Vernon Unitarian Church. As we get into spring, we're able to do more outdoor things. And next Sunday is Easter, and I hope you'll all be here right after this service for our egg hunt. We're meeting right out there. And, as mentioned earlier, it's Workin' Annie Day. And what does that mean? The Workin' Annie song. You'll find the lyrics in your order of service.
On your phone.
Or on your phone. And at home, they're in your electronic order of service. And the reason Mr. Mark is up here is because he's a good singer. Are you ready? Here we go. MVUC on the hill, E-I-E-I-O. Cleaning up round the old windmill, E-I-E-I-O. With a help here and a help there. Here a help, there a help, everywhere a help. MVUC on the hill, E-I-E-I-O. Time to clip the creeping vines, E-I-E-I-O. Crawling up trees and twisting round signs, E-I-E-I-O. With a clip here and a clip there. Here a clip, there a clip, everywhere a clip, clip. Old MacDonald Hill, E-I-E-I-O. Pull the weeds from the garden beds, E-I-E-I-O.
Pull the weeds round the turkey sheds,
E-I-E-I-O.
with a weed here and a weed there.
Here a weed, there a weed, everywhere a weed, MVUC on the hill.
Here a clip,
there a clip, everywhere a clip,
MVUC on a hill.
E-I-E-I-O. Paint the dingy fence and rails, E-I-E-I-O. Paint what's gray with a brush and pail, E-I-E-I-O.
Paint
with some paint here and some paint there. Here's some paint, there's some paint, everywhere some paint. Weed here and weed there. Here's a weed, there's a weed, everywhere
Clip.
a weed. Clip here and a clip there. Here a clip, there a clip, everywhere a clip.
MVUC on a hill. E-I-E-I-O.
Thank you, Mr. Mark.
Certainly.
Mount Vernon Unitarian Church continues to share the plate with committed organizations that you, our members, have chosen. During the month of April, our offering is being shared with Rising Hope United Methodist Mission Church. Rising Hope is more than a hypothermia shelter on winter nights and more than just a church on Sundays. Volunteers and staff serve hot lunches several days a week, year-round, to homeless, low-income people in the Hybla Valley area. Twice a week, they run community food banks, and in the warmer months, a weekly fresh produce distribution. Because Rising Hope welcomes people for daytime respite, the church is able to provide other services that are difficult to find for homeless people, like mail receiving services, phone messages, and limited phone use for those who do not have cell phones. These services provide a long list of benefits for clients who need them. We are a community that invites spiritual and material generosity from our members and friends. Speaking for myself, I recognize that these 2 years of COVID have been tough for our church budget, and I'm increasing my pledge. MVUC is my favorite charity and my spiritual home. I invite this gathered community to offer whatever you are most comfortable with in spirit and financial generosity for the mission of our church community. If you would like to write a check and mail it, please make it to MVUC, and in the memo line, indicate how you would like it to be used. You can also follow the link in the chat box to make a one-time or a recurring payment. We are so grateful for your contribution. Thank you.
Wow, good morning. I'm Mimi Stevens, and I would like to take just enough time to say that the first time I did this presentation, there were a lot fewer books than the ones I have now. It was in this church on August 27th, 2000, for a summer service. And since then, I have given it at a UUMN convention, at the UU Historical Society, and at congregations here and there all across the country, revising it a little bit every time. So here's today's version. In 1999, at the annual conference of the Unitarian Universalist Musicians Network, the Reverend Tom Chulak, who gave several workshops on hymnals, pointed out that among major religions, Unitarian Universalism is unique in that it has no scripture, no one unifying holy book that is used by all worshipers. The Jews have the Torah, the Christians the Bible, the Muslims the Quran, and that's naming only the Western religions. And within Christianity, there are books uniting specific groups such as the Book of Mormon or the Anglican Book of Common Prayer. We UUs place great value on the written word, but we don't have a scripture. What we do have, Tom Chulak suggested, is the hymnal. It is, or was at that time anyway, the one book used by Unitarian Universalist congregations across the continent. We don't all sing the same hymns. For example, a hymn that we sing frequently here in Alexandria, "We'll Build a Land," is unfamiliar to our neighbors at All Souls in Washington, D.C., just across the Potomac. But on any Sunday, we could be singing the same hymn as a congregation in Maine, Florida, Texas, or Idaho, because we all have the same book. And the same responsive reading out of that book might be heard in Michigan, Louisiana, or British Columbia. My own interest in hymns and hymnals goes back so far that I can't even remember when it began. As the daughter of a minister who cared intensely about the cohesiveness of his Sunday morning worship services, I learned at an early age that it was important to choose the right hymns. My father also taught me to identify the tunes by name, so that "These Things Shall Be a Loftier Race" will always be Truro to me. Traditionally, hymn refers to the words. The music is called the tune, and in past times, a hymn book had only words, and the tunes were in a separate book. Aren't we lucky to have them all together on one page? My mother also played a part. Going through her files after her death, I ran across what was apparently a paper she had done for a seminary class in 1936, and note that date, entitled "Forward Through the Ages, a Hymnal for the Living Church," in which she had compiled a list of about 200 hymns for you, and this is a quote, "for use during the next 10 years. Let me read from her foreword to this collection. "We have tried to include a large number of the best modern hymns with the finest of the older hymns that are consonant with more enlightened religious thought. We have tried to place emphasis on the present world and the Christian life on earth. Some of the older lyrics could profitably be altered. Some have been altered already. This collection is designed to convey the heritage of a glorious past in church song at the same time that it opens the door to a glorious future. Now, I don't have access to hymnals going back as far as Tom Chulak did, which is probably a good thing. His references started more than 100 years ago, but I'm only going to use the books I have in my personal collection. One of the points he made, though, is that even just looking at which hymn the editors selected to appear on the first page tells us something about the religious climate of the church for which it was intended. So, although the page numbers in your order of service are those from Singing the Living Tradition, the hymns we will be singing are all number 1. The first hymns in each of the 4 hymnals that have been published since 1937, when Hymns of the Spirit appeared. Incidentally, the words of this first hymn are not the same as you would have sung prior to 1993. In 1937, no one referred to God as other than He. But by 1993, that was no longer politically correct. So we have the name instead of His name, as well as a few other changes. Still, it reflects a God-centered religious worldview, and both words and tune are from the Jewish tradition. Please rise and join the choir in singing hymn number 215, verses 1 and 2. It's in your order of service if you don't have a hymnal. In 1927, the directors of the American Unitarian Association appointed a commission on hymns and services, whose task was to prepare a revised edition of the 1914 New Hymn and Tune Book, which was in general use in Unitarian churches at that time. In 1931, the Universalist General Convention appointed a similar commission on hymns and services to prepare a new hymn book based on the 2 books then in use by Universalist churches. Almost immediately, a proposal was made that the 2 commissions should cooperate in editing jointly a book that could be used by both groups of churches. From the preface of Hymns of the Spirit, the Red Book.
Stay there, I'll use this one. I can use this one.
Okay, I want to use that one.
So the result is a book which is much more than a revision of the New Hymn and Tune Book of 1914 or of Church Harmonies and Hymns of the Church, although these books have provided the foundation upon which the editors have built. The present book includes all those hymns and tunes from the older books, which, upon inquiry, appear to have considerable present-day use, but has also been enriched by the inclusion of many fine hymns and tunes, new and old, which have hitherto been unfamiliar to our congregations. The editors have particularly sought for hymns with a strong ethical note, which emphasize the newer social applications of religion, and for hymns which give expression to modern conceptions of the human soul and its relation to the universe. Satisfactory new hymns in which these ideas are phrased in adequate literary form for public worship are not numerous. As is always the case with a new hymn book, it is inevitable that the individual user should regret the omission of one or another hymn endeared to him by old association, and should question the value of some of the new hymns and music. In both their omissions and inclusions, the editors have sought to reflect alike the actual usage and the present tendencies of religious thought, and to make allowances for all the diverse views and varieties of taste to be found in our free churches.
The volume, which included Hymns of the Spirit, also had a section entitled Services of Religion for Use in the Churches of the Free Spirit. Some of the services found there differ very little from the services I remember in the congregational church of my childhood. Most include the Lord's Prayer, and the words of invocations, litanies, and responses are completely familiar to me. They even include Anglican-style chants, which we did not use in the congregational church. But the first Unitarian church I attended in 1960, when this was still the hymnal in common use, did. I got to go to a Unitarian church and chant psalms. The editors do comment that, quote, "It is no doubt unnecessary in view of the independent attitude of the free churches to state that these services are not offered as prescribed forms which require literal adherence." In 1937, although the social and ethical aspects of religion were receiving greater emphasis in both service materials and hymns, the vast majority of the hymns reflected the fact that the free churches were still very theistic in outlook. The words God, Lord, Father, and King are found in most of them, and even Christ and Christian appear with greater frequency than UUs of the present day might expect. Incidentally, over half the hymns in my mother's collection are found in Hymns of the Spirit. In 1955, the Beacon Press published a volume entitled We Sing of Life. The first song in this book has, like the first song in Hymns of the Spirit, withstood the test of time. It appears on page 44 in the current hymnal. Please rise and join singing We Sing of Golden Mornings. An interesting footnote to this hymn: in We Sing of Life, the Orange Book, the text is shown as, quote, arranged by Vincent B. Silliman from an anonymous original. Silliman, a Unitarian minister, was the editor of We Sing of Life. In Hymns for the Celebration of Life, published only 9 years later, the source is given as Ralph Waldo Emerson, but in the backs of the book there are notes that state that Silliman adapted the words from a 1925 hymnal and that Emerson's poem will be seen to be the original text. In the current hymnal, Silliman's name is not mentioned. It just gives the credit to Emerson. Sic transit even the slight glory of the hymn book editor. We Sing of Life was intended primarily for children and young people and was never an official hymnal of the denomination. However, when I joined the UU Fellowship of Ogden, Utah in 1963, it was the hymnal that group was using. The fact that songs mentioning God are definitely in the minority probably made it much more palatable to that very humanist-oriented group than Hymns of the Spirit would have been. In fact, there were a number of members who thought we should not sing hymns at all. Well, too much like church. This group, the Reformed, met in the kitchen for coffee, while we hymn singers, known as the Orthodox, gathered around the piano for a couple of songs before the speaker and discussion part of the meeting began. The book was a project of the Committee on Religious Education of the American Ethical Union, not even UU's. And although it was published by the Beacon Press, UU publisher, it was the American Ethical Union which held the copyright. The editor, as I mentioned, was a Unitarian minister. Committees and informal groups from both the Unitarians and the Universalists, still at that time separate denominations, participated in the project, and the foreword was written by Unitarian religious educator Sophia Lyon Foz. The merger of the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist General Convention was finalized in 1961. The newly formed Unitarian Universalist Association soon appointed a hymn book commission, and Hymns for the Celebration of Life, the blue hymnal, which formerly had a beautiful tree in gold on the front, now long since worn off, published in 1964. The opening hymn is classified as a hymn of celebration and praise. Celebration and praise, but the name of God is not mentioned. Please rise and join in singing hymn 40, The Morning Hangs a Signal, which incidentally is also found in Hymns of the Spirit, though much farther back in the book. These words from the preface to Hymns for the Celebration of Life. Religion is a present reality. It is also an inheritance from the past. Hymns for the Celebration of Life is edited in the conviction that a vital faith must be a singing faith, and that each generation needs to express itself freshly in its own idiom through song and the spoken word. Although Hymns of the Spirit had not attempted to group hymns according to subject, it did have a topical index. One of those topics was man in the world of nature and society. In Hymns for the Celebration of Life, the topic is simply man. Though there were still plenty of hymns that mentioned God, and all the familiar Christmas carols appeared with the traditional words, yay, the humanist trend was clearly showing. The readings, in addition to the Old and New Testaments of the Bible, included passages from the Quran, the Tao Te Ching, and the Bhagavad Gita, as well as the words of white males, both living and dead. Although a number of hymns had texts by women poets, the only reading by a woman was Sophia Fa's traditional, "It matters what we believe." This was, after all, 1963. Feminist consciousness raising was just getting started, and no one worried about the fact that the word man was used to describe the human race, and all general pronouns, as well as all references to God, were masculine. That lasted for almost 20 years. In 1982, the Little Green Book came out, and now you can see what that beautiful tree looked like. It was a compilation of selected hymns from the Blue Hymnal, in which the words had been altered to remove gender-specific language. Some worked better than others, but it did show that the denomination was being sensitive to social trends. In 1993, the Unitarian Universalist Association published, Singing the Living Tradition, the Gray Hymnal, the hymnal we use today. The Hymn Book Resources Commission, which worked for 5 years to bring this book into being, wrote in the preface, "We remember the words of our predecessors. Religion is a present reality. It is also an inheritance." Or to use a more current expression, a living faith must have both roots and wings. Our living tradition began the 20th century primarily as a liberal Christianity among Universalists and Unitarians, and ends that same century also embracing the riches of humanism, feminism, mysticism, natural theism, the Jewish tradition, many other world faith traditions, and the skepticism generated by this century's disillusioning woes and wars. I find a direct relationship between that last phrase, this century's, talking about the 20th now, disillusioning woes and wars, and the selection of Louis Untermeyer's Prayer for This House as the first hymn we find when we open the book. In Hymns for the Celebration of Life, it appeared under the topic Love and Human Brotherhood. In Singing the Living Tradition, it was moved to the #1 spot and reclassified to the topic, the celebration of life. However they classify it, I'm glad the Hymn Book Commission put it first. Please rise now and join in singing all the verses of one of my favorite hymns. You should remember it from a service a few weeks ago.
This storm, and be the fortune
I pretty much can't sing that hymn without getting chills. I love the Hymn Book Commission for putting it first. One of my humanist friends years ago made me a beautiful calligraphy sign which read, "God or someone, bless our home." I took it seriously. I always felt that if the word bless means make happy, then that someone has to be the people who live there, striving together to make it a holy place. You can say with God's help or not, as you please. I do, but to me, this hymn embodies belief in the holiness of the home, whether of an individual family or a church community. By faith made strong, these rafters will withstand the battering of the storm. It's a value I'm glad to see receiving the recognition it deserves. What an important part of life to celebrate. And while we're talking about celebration, I have a bumper sticker on my car which the message says, "Celebrate diversity." That could surely be taken as a slogan for this hymn book, which includes music and texts from 6 continents and words from the world's sacred writings. In 1964, the editors wrote, "With few exceptions, we have preferred to use the King James Version for biblical passages." In 1993, we find these words, "In selecting passages from the Bible, we elected to use several versions to better engage the diversity of modern minds and hearts." Also, women are well represented in every part of the book, even comprising half the membership of the Hymn Book Resources Commission. What a change from only 30 years previously, when the commission included only 1 woman, or 1937, when there were none. To a much greater degree than any of its predecessors, we find songs that certainly don't fit the traditional idea of what a hymn is. Folk tunes, spirituals, the music of Japan, India, Africa, the Philippines, music from the Genevan Psalter, and music by living composers, even as our lives become ever more enriched by diversity, so also is our music. And consider Kenneth Patton's words sung to Luther's great tune, Ein feste Burg, known to American churchgoers as "A mighty fortress is our God." In Hymns for the Celebration of Life, the words were, "Man is the earth, upright and proud. His day is just beginning." In the new version, revised by Patton himself for the new hymnal, not only has the gender-specific language been removed, but the focus has moved from objective to subjective, you might say. Somehow, I find a greater humility as well as inclusiveness in the new version. We are the earth. Our day is just beginning. This is a spirit that seems to me much more manifest in Singing the Living Tradition than in any of its predecessors. A spirit of community, of we-ness, of being involved in what we are singing, of singing with something, not just singing about it. So yes, I say the hymnal is the UU Good Book, and it continues to grow and evolve, just as our understanding of and connection with the world continues to grow and evolve. Famous phrase, revelation is not sealed. Think back on the hymns we have sung this morning, the first hymns in each of these books. from the praise of God to the praise of nature, to the idea of nature as a metaphor for the soul, to the blessing of hearth and home. This has been an evolution. Perhaps in another 15 years or so, if historical precedent is anything to go by, our shared faith will have further evolved to the point that we will again redefine just what our good book should contain. We've already taken a step in that direction with the publication of Singing the Journey, our Teal hymnal. This was published in 2005, but it is intended to supplement the hymnal, not supplant it. Because it is a supplement, it has no number one, but I think the title itself is significant. We are part of a living tradition, which is also a journey. And the denomination is continuing to publish songbooks like the recent children's songbook, Let Your Light Shine, and we have even published a supplement in Spanish, recognizing the increasing number of Spanish speakers in our nation. So let us keep singing together, and let us remember as we do that we're joining our voices not just in this community. With these shared songs, we are connected with the greater community of Unitarian Universalists. And beyond that, with the world we have drawn into our experience through its songs. Deep breath. Now let us pause in silence for the restoration of our spirits. Even as singing begins with breathing, so as you sit in silence, be aware of your breathing and listen to the music that is within you. Please join me now for a moment of prayerful reflection. O great Spirit of life, create in us a thankful heart. For if we have but one prayer, it must be a prayer of thanksgiving. For the wells we have not dug, for the harvest we have not planted, for the church we did not begin, but must continue to build, for the songs we have received from those who came before us, that we may sing together with our separate voices uniting in one song. For all these we give thanks. Where's my last page? Okay. And now for our final hymn, please rise and sing number 123, Spirit of Life. If you need the book, it's page 123. This is the hymn probably sung in more Unitarian churches on the North American continent than any other. Some of them sing it every Sunday. But occasionally works very well too.
Please join me in saying the words of our chalice extinguishing. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Though the flame of our chalice has been extinguished, may it continue to burn in your hearts, cleansing your thoughts, igniting you to right action, lighting your way to the paths of goodness and truth until we are together again. We give thanks for being. We give thanks for being here. We give thanks for being here together. So may it be. Blessed be, and let the congregation say, Amen. Amen.